Some good news this week in science. A study has found more people in intensive care with COVID-19 are surviving compared to the start of the pandemic. Scientists looked at more than 10,000 cases around the world, and CTV's science and technology specialist Dan Riskin joins me with more. This is good news. Dan, the study focused on ICU mortality rates. So walk me through what the scientists found.
Yeah, this is ICU mortality rate. So it's not how many people die who get COVID-19 at all. It's the people that are sort of in the biggest trouble and go into the intensive care unit and their likelihood of survival. And if you look early on, if you look through the end of March, for example, which isn't that early on, that's still pretty late. Through the end of March, if you were in the ICU, 59.5% was the likelihood of you surviving. And so that's not, I mean, those are better than 50-50, but that's not exactly what you'd like. But if you look a little later, if you look through the end of May, you're looking at 41.6%. And so, sorry, that's the death rate. And so what you see is, yeah, so I've got the numbers backwards there, but what you see is the death rate coming down significantly between the end of March and the end of May. And what this means is that we're seeing that doctors are getting better at keeping people alive when they're in the throes of death in those urgent situations.
Do we have a sense of what reasons that they're giving for this shift? And does it bode well if and when a second wave hits?
Right. So we have a bunch of reasons. I mean, one is, people have been very focused on vaccines, but antivirals are a big part of it. So using different drugs, treating the symptoms and trying to prevent that cytokine storm when the immune system rises up against a person's own body to attack them. Also, a real emphasis on inflammation and treating inflammation, the things that cause inflammation and the results of inflammation have also had an impact. But overall, what's interesting about this is that you don't see it focused on just certain parts of the world. If you look at the mortality rate in Asia, if you look at it in North America, and if you look at it in Europe, you see the same trend across all these places. And so it's coming down, which is good. But yes, if there's a second wave, we're still in scary territory. The death rate is still far too high. 40% is much higher than a person would like. If you have a different strain of viral pneumonia, not COVID-19, but a different virus that gives you pneumonia, the death rate is usually around 22%. So we're still twice as bad as that. And that means that if there is a second wave, we're still in a very problematic territory. It's not something that we're going to be able to treat away. And you can't just follow that graph and expect that the death rate's going to drop to zero.
Well, yeah, like a 6 out of 10 chance of surviving is not that great. So 40% death rate still too high. Are there any, is there any sense that the scientists found key things that they say will help bring that number down?
Well, it's a focus on the treating the symptoms of COVID-19 and taking care of people. Early on, there was a thought that people needed to get on ventilators as quickly as possible. The more ventilators, the better. But it turned out that a lot of people didn't do well with ventilators. And so having that tube down your throat and having that oxygen pushed into your body, a lot of people just didn't recover from that, especially the elderly. And so there's been a move in some cases away from that and into other kinds of therapies or putting that off until much later. And then the other piece is that, early on, it was just the worst of the worst that were getting into the ICUs. And they may have been just sicker people as opposed to now in places like Europe where the hospitals have more room to take people. This is not true in the States right now, of course, but they've got more room to take people. So they may be getting people into the ICU that aren't as sick as the people they were seeing earlier on in March.
Dan, really interesting numbers to drill down on. Thanks so much for your insight.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching. If you like this, be sure to subscribe here.
And you can check out more Your Morning videos right here.